Good evening, everyone. My name is Gerard Mitchell, and I'm the chairman of the Prince Edward Island Electoral Boundaries Commission, which is established under the Electoral Boundaries Act. It's a 5-person commission. Other members are, on my immediate right, Lynn Murray, QC, on my far right, Elmer MacDonald, on my immediate left, Kerry Carpenter, and on my far left, Libby Shaw. The function of the commission is to review the electoral boundaries of the districts of the province and make a report to the Legislative Assembly setting out recommendations for changes as to the areas, boundaries, and the names of the electoral districts. In determining what is to be included in the electoral boundaries of a district, the Commission is required to take into account a number of factors. First, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, data from the Register of Electors, polling divisions from the last general election, geographical features, information pertaining to population, communities of interest, municipal boundaries, and public input at meetings such as this, and any guidelines proposed for consideration by resolution of the Legislative Assembly. And in addition, the Commission is allowed to take into account any other factors it considers relevant. As part of the process, the Commission is required to hold public meetings such as this to give people an opportunity to come forward and make representations to the Commission as to the boundaries in their areas. So far, I think we've had 12 such meetings. We've got 2 left, including this one. The Commission is to make its report to the Legislative Assembly within 6 months of its establishment, which would take us at the latest to June the 6th. I should stress that at this point that there's a difference this time from previous electoral boundaries commissions in that in previous years the decision of the Electoral Boundaries Commission was not binding on the legislature. This time it is. So it's more important than ever for people to come and make their case known to the Commission, because there will not be another forum. It's also important to remember that the boundaries we put in place this time are intended to last for 3 general election cycles, which could be 10 or 11 years. So we have to take into account growth and decline. The Commission has no authority to add to or to subtract from the number of electoral districts. That's at 27 now, and it'll be at 27 when we're finished. We can't add or subtract. The last time the Commission held public meetings, they tell me it was a drawback for them not to have any maps to show the members of the public or to engage them in discussion. This time the Commission prepared a couple of sample maps which it brings to all of the meetings to give an indication as to how the boundaries might be adjusted. We also have on there in the heavy black outlay the districts as they previously are. So, and the new ones are colored, so you can compare the colored with the black and see how the maps were adjusted. However, I'll say that these were just sample maps. They're not maps that we're proposing, and any map that is final will likely be somewhat, if not considerably, different from either of those. Now, the changes that are necessary are made necessary because presently we have a number of districts with too many electors and others with too few. There's about 100,000 voters on the island, and if we make all of the districts even, they would all have about 3,700. The average number of voters is important because the discretion that the Commission has in drawing boundaries is limited by both the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and by the Electoral Boundaries Act itself. The Charter, which is part of the Constitution and therefore the supreme law of the land, requires that any deviations from parity be only such as will contribute to the better government of the population as a whole, given due regard to regional issues. The Electoral Boundaries Act, on the other hand, provides that no district can be above or below the average by more than 25%. Now, presently, we have 3 districts that are over 25%, 5 more that are around over 20%, and 4 more over 15. So that means that there's at least a dozen districts that could be considered too large or too small. You have to keep in mind that the Supreme Court of Canada, in interpreting the right to vote in Section 3 of the Charter, has decided that the only variances allowable in the context of electoral boundaries are those that can be justified in the name of more effective representation for the population as a whole. Voter parity is of prime importance, but the Supreme Court also acknowledged that it's not the only factor to be taken into account. Effective representation is the overall goal, and that requires a commission such as ours to take into account countervailing factors such as geography, municipal boundaries, population growth and population decline, community history, community of interest, group identity, minority language, and cultural representation. So while numbers are important in establishing electoral boundaries, it's not merely an arithmetic exercise. At the end of the day, the goal is effective representation, and there may well be factors that justify some departure from parity. Now, I'd like to invite any of you who wish to make a presentation or ask questions to please come forward to the mic. Everything that's said here is being recorded for the record, and if you wouldn't mind, when you come forward, just please state your name for the record. And we're ready to hear whoever's ready to speak. Has the mic got any takers? Any questions, issues, or answers that you'd like to have?
If I may.
Yep.
I'm Peter Meggs from Cornwall. Just one quick question that I had. I realize this activity has to happen every 3 elections, but given that we're now looking at the possibility of proportional representation in the future with a referendum or plebiscite, I think it's a referendum coming up in the next election, is it possible that all the deliberations that happen through this body might be kind of out the window as a result of whatever happens at referendum time? In other words, we may have a whole new configuration of districts as a result, and you folks will be back to the drawing board?
That's possible.
Okay.
But it's no part of our mandate to consider that. I mean, the Act directs us to do it as for 3 elections. That's, any questions, concerns?
I guess, Peter Meggs again, I guess the other thing that I would ask is, just in terms, it's very difficult to project population trends down the road. Now, Cornwall, obviously, from the last census, our population increased, and that was a nice thing. We have no idea really how much population growth may or may not happen in the next few elections, over the course of the next few elections. So it's possible that even though right now our district here in Cornwall is pretty comfortable in terms of the variance. Again, it's hard to speculate, but that may have changed radically before the next time an electoral boundaries commission happens. But there's no real allowance for that, I suppose. We just have to go with the flow, and if we're over 15% by then, if we're over 20% by then, it'd be great if we were over 25% by then, but there's just no way of projecting how these things are going to happen.
Pretty hard to pin down.
Right. So, but there's no allowance for anything other than having one of these, to look at boundaries once every 3 elections. That's what's set in stone in the...
That's what's set in stone so far, anyway.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Hello. Mr. McLeod, you indicated at one point that you might like to make a submission to the commission. Would this be a good time for you?
Gary McLeod, I'm the Chief Electoral Officer for the province. One of the things that we've been looking at when we're looking at the boundary of all the districts and the complaints that we've received when people are voting is that people who live on one street and they have people on one side of the street are in one district and people on the other side of the street are in another district. And one of the things I've just asked if that could be looked at when the boundaries are being designed, that possibly we could incorporate the entire street in a boundary. It may not happen in urban areas, but in the rural areas it might be a little easier. I know it is challenging to draw a map that way, but it would certainly keep communities and areas of interest together as well. Neighbors would be in the same district rather than in opposite ones.
Yeah. We're always talking about not dividing communities, and sometimes with the boundaries, we do the very thing we don't want to do.
Yeah, and like I said, I know it's difficult to do and challenging. It's a lot easier to draw down the middle of the road, but we do hear the complaints about that when it comes to election time. How come my neighbor is in a different district? We have the same concerns and same interests.
We live across the road from each other.
Yep.
Thank you. That happened out around here?
My name's Bev McIsaac, and I'll follow up with a similar sort of question. With all of the chatter about municipal amalgamation, is there any consideration in the future we could have 6 communities that join as one, but are in 2 different districts?
Yes, that certainly can happen. We try to respect municipal boundaries as much as possible, but it's hard to see them all down the road, and we have to work with the numbers at the same time. And sometimes amalgamations are at early stages, and some are further along than others. it's another problem.
I don't have to go to the mic.
Yeah, oh yeah. We need you on the record.
I just wanted to know if, my name's Bonnie McDonald. Peter, I just wanted to know if anybody brought up the new bypass, Transcan extension that's going into Cornwall, and what that will do to open up more properties, more people wanting to move into the area, like, did anybody,
No.
nobody from the town brought that up, did they, or?
It's, if I may, it's something that we were considering, and one of the reasons I mentioned the potential growth of Cornwall in the future is that's one thing we hope does happen, is that the bypass does result in more growth, so perhaps our population will be, growing exponentially growing at a rate that we weren't anticipating because of it.
I
Like
think.
Stratford.
Yes. I think since 2006, the population has grown approximately 14%.
Since
And-
206?
I think so, yeah. But a lot of the land's been locked, right, in the town? So I think with the bypass, there certainly will be a significant growth over the coming years. Yeah, I guess that's all I wanted to bring up was. Our population was what, 5,000 something?
Our population grew 3% from the last census, so we were at 5,260, I forget what the exact number is
Or I think we're
now.
5,348 or something right now, well, in 216. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to bring up is the growth
3.6.
that'll probably take place, because of the bypass, because of all the land that's locked now. The Trans-Canada will open up, to subdivisions or to whatever. And I think somebody had told me that there was approximately 300 lots right now, or potential lots for sale with subdivisions of the area.
In Cornwall, you're
I
saying?
think that's what somebody had told me. Did you?
Potential, it could be,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I thought, okay, yeah.
Are there any big developments underway now?
Several.
Yeah.
And
He
several.
could speak to that, well, he's from the town, I'm just a resident. But, yeah, I was just concerned with the bypass opening up that the growth will
With the-
probably happen.
That'll drive growth, you think?
Oh, I think so, or I hope so.
Hope so.
I hope so.
Peter, are you a counselor in the?
I'm on town council,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, and I'm chair of planning board. And you're absolutely right that we're really hoping that the completion of the bypass especially will mean that it opens up what'll be the main street of the town. What's now the Trans-Canada will be the main street of the town. And we've been really kind of constrained in terms of how much development we can do along Main Street. And so we're hoping that once the bypass is complete, then we have better access to our own main street, really. And that, there are some projects either happening right now in terms of developments or kind of in the hopper right now. And we're hoping to have we're hoping for a busy building season this year. But definitely, when you look at what we'll be able to access in the future because of the bypass, we hope that has a really positive effect on the growth of the town. So that's why I hope that, we'll be doing the same activity and after 3 more elections, and we'll be looking at even more growth in Cornwall simply because things have opened up so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Someone did expect it.
Yeah. Why don't you ask?
Mr. Meggs, when do you expect the bypass to be complete?
So the big North River roundabout gets underway I think it'll be early next month, but maybe though, if the weather cooperates, maybe transportation will try to get started on it late this month. So get ready, there might be a little bit of delay, or a whole lot. But they are going to be putting temporary roads around it, so hopefully it'll be efficient. So, and then I think transportation the transportation's meeting with various landowners now to kind of give them the details of the bypass, but I think they do hope to get underway with the actual building of the road in August. So I think by, what is this, I think maybe by 2019, the entire project will be complete to Clyde River.
I think it's supposed to be 219.
So that's best case scenario perhaps, but we're certainly hoping for the best.
Thank you. Any further concerns or issues you want to bring to our attention?
I just have a couple questions.
Sure.
Not to do with this, but, the number of MLAs, does that stay the same after this process is over?
Yes, it has.
And,
There'll be
I'm-
27 districts, just as there are now.
okay. I might have missed this in the beginning, but when you guys are finished of your project, is your project binding?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. And how many elections will this
It's
change?
supposed to cover the next three general elections.
3 general elections.
So-
And when would recommendations be made public?
Well, they have to be made within 6 months of the establishment of the commission, which was fully established on December the 6th, so that would take us to June the 6th. However, we're hoping to beat that date by a bit.
Okay, thank you.
I would mention one more thing, if I may,
Sure.
that the last time we went through this process, Cornwall Meadowbank was actually, I think it was called North River Meadowbank at the time, perhaps. Anyway, it encompassed quite a larger area, and at the time, we were, I think we were either at variance or over variance over our 15%. So the town did make a presentation at to the Electoral Boundaries Commission of the time, just to ask that consideration be given to make to make District 16 geographically smaller, which is exactly what happened. So now, our district, I think, ends at the northern boundary of Cornwall and goes as far south as the southern boundary of Meadowbank. So it really only encompasses two municipalities, namely Cornwall and Meadowbank. So because the variance wasn't very high this time, then we kind of opted that not to make a presentation to the commission. We felt it wasn't necessary this time because, as I said before, we seem to be kind of at a very comfortable stage in terms of the size and growth of our district. But as I mentioned, I foresee that changing over the course of a few elections. But so that's, anyway, just in case anybody wondered why the town of Cornwall didn't come forward with a presentation like I'm sure the town of Stratford did. That's probably the main reason. Is just that the variance for us isn't something that we need to worry about too much at this point, but down the road we'll definitely ask to have it looked at again. So thank you.
Could be that it has a domino effect when we start moving boundaries.
Yeah, we got to watch. But we had one in municipalities, we tried to stick to that.
Right. Just as long
There's
as
another.
they know that what they have may not be what they had.
Yes.
I guess I'll just ask one question since it's a fairly quiet room. My name's Ronnie McPhee, and I was just kind of taking everything in, and I know you guys have given this presentation quite a bit over the past weeks, and I know you've been, and thank you for your work, by the way. I know it's much appreciated. When you're looking at those numbers, you said it's an electorate of about 98,000 or 100,000 voted right now, and is that current numbers?
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at kind of how Prince Edward Island is and what my definition of MLA is to represent everybody. So if you think about the population, I know they're aiming to go to 150,000 by the end of the year. That's about 50,000 people that may or may not be considered in this. And what I mean by that is, if you're thinking just about electorate, you think of all of refugees and all these other people that are coming into the province and stuff like that. Is that considered? So you think of...
Yeah, we have to take that into account, because one of the subjects that we have to take into account that I read off there is population. So population means everybody. So yeah, you're quite correct. You have to... the MLA has to represent the children and immigrants and all the people who don't vote or can't vote.
Exactly.
As
Okay.
well as those who do.
Yeah, so that was one question I had, and I guess the second one is these numbers here. Is this for? Am I correct in saying this from the plebiscite numbers where you got these from, including 16 and 17-year-olds?
No. This only includes 18-year-olds.
So are you taking that into consideration?
18 and up.
You think if you're 14 now, you'll be able to vote in the next election after the next one? For example, you'll be 18. Is that considered to see where those 14, 15, 16-year-olds are, where the families are? Because I'm thinking if you're living in a suburb or something, that you may have more family dynamics compared to maybe rural parts of the province, or in the city if you're a university student or what have you. Is that being taken into
Well,
consideration?
it's a factor, but it's kind of hard to nail down. It's pretty speculative, but something we're aware of for sure.
Thank you.
An interesting statistic that came up this year is we have more people dying than are born. That's another factor to consider. The first time that happened was in 2016, and may well be for the next few years, the situation. Anyone else? Well, if not, thank you for coming, and we appreciate your presentations, and we will take them all under consideration. And hopefully we'll come up with something that works. Probably won't make everybody happy, but hopefully it'll work for the most part. Thank you.